Formula racing. His prowess and winning reputation at the helm of karts enabled him to attract further sponsorship and move into the high-speed world of open-wheel Formula racing. When former hotelier Willy Webber, a racing enthusiast and car salesman, invited Schumacher to test drive his Formula 3 car, the results convinced Webber to back the teenager's career. This was the beginning of one of the most successful management contracts of all time. For the next 2 years, funded by Webber, he competed in the German F3 series, winning the title in 1990. Towards the end of 1990, he joined the Mercedes Junior Racing program in the World Sports Prototype Championship. This was an unusual move for a young driver. Most of Schumacher's contemporaries would instead compete in Formula 3000 on their way to Formula 1. However, Webber advised Schumacher that exposure to professional press conferences and driving powerful cars in long-distance races would help his career. 2 years later, he stood third on the dais of the German F3 Championship, but went on to win that title a year later. Finally, Michael was able to show the world what he had learned in his kart days. He won 5 times and later topped that by also winning the international races at Macau and Fiji. A year later also saw his Formula 3000 debut, where he finished second in the Japanese series. But it was enough to attract the eyes of many in the F1 market. With Webber at the helm of the burgeoning champion's career, Schumacher made his Formula 1 debut with the Jordan team at the 1991 Belgian Grand Prix. Despite retiring on the opening lap of the race with clutch problems, Schumacher had impressed the Jordan team on his first outing in an F1 car. He had qualified for a 7th grid position on a track that he had not driven beforehand. He had only ever ridden a bike around it. This was to be Schumacher's only race for Jordan, with rival team Benetton swiftly signing him up for the very next race. Schumacher finished the 1991 season with 4 points in 6 races. After overcoming contractual issues with Mercedes, Schumacher took his place on the podium for the first time at the 1992 Belgian Grand Prix. The race at Spa, a circuit that was to become his favourite track, showed for the first time his winning ability on a wet racetrack. He went on to finish the season in 3rd place in the drivers' rankings with 8 podium finishes. He continued with the Benetton team and in 1993 saw him win a superb race in Portugal, rounding off the season 4th overall. Michael stunned the Grand Prix world when he was quicker in the Benetton than Senna was in the Williams. The 94 season saw Schumacher leading in the World Championship Stakes, despite the setback from a 2-race ban. At the headquarters of the sport's governing body in Paris, Schumacher failed with an appeal against the ban. The punishment was imposed by the FIA after the German driver ignored a black flag at the 94 British Grand Prix. The flag, which orders a car back into the pits, was shown to Schumacher after he broke the rules by overtaking Williams driver Damon Hill on the warm-up lap. Schumacher was also disqualified from the later Belgian Grand Prix for a technical infringement, and the gap between him and Hill on the championship table was reduced to 21 points. Hill stood to close the gap to 1 point if he won the 2 races in the Benetton driver's absence. This was not to be. With his October win at Jerez in Spain, Schumacher had chalked up 10 wins in 50 starts and retained a 5-point lead over Britain's Damon Hill. The youngest driver ever to compete for the World Championship, his confidence was subdued as they went into the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka.
It would be nice if this will be the race which decides the World Championship, because this means the only driver who can get World Champion is me, because I have a 5-point advantage, and if somebody can come out of Suzuka as a champion, it would be me, as I said. But I think it's going to be very difficult. Suzuka is a circuit which I like personally very much, but as we have seen, we are very tight with Williams and Damon Hill together, and it's going to be very, very difficult for us.
With Schumacher leading by a single point going into the final race of the year in Australia, the 1994 season which had been marred by the deaths of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger, drew to a close in dramatic fashion. The tensions had grown throughout the year after the allegations of cheating had been aired. The culmination of a down-to-a-wire contest for the championship between Schumacher and Hill was in sight. The Nigel Mansell victory at Adelaide was overshadowed by a crash between Schumacher and Hill, putting them both out of the race and subsequently deciding the world title. The 1994 Drivers' Championship was determined with Schumacher's 92 points, leaving him the narrow winner after a year of tragedy and drama. For the youngest ever driver and the first German to win the Formula One World Championship, the celebrations were short-lived, as the British tabloids saw that one of theirs had lost and they went on the attack. Amid growing controversy surrounding the circumstances of his win, a subdued crowd met the 25-year-old world champion when his plane touched down in pouring rain at Frankfurt on his return to Germany. Schumacher said there were no hard feelings between himself and Hill, who both had to retire after the crash. Hill had congratulated him, and he did not get the feeling that Hill was bitter. It would have been better to have won the Australian race to win the title, as the crash was not a nice way to end it. Schumacher said he had steering problems throughout the race, but did not look in his mirror because he was concentrating so hard on the steering. By the time he saw Hill, it was too late to stop, but if Hill had waited, he could have overtaken later. Michael Schumacher offered his World Championship triumph to the memory of Ayrton Senna. Schumacher, in typical self-depreciating manner, had shrugged off praise to honour the Brazilian champion. He said, "It hasn't sunk in that I've won yet. I want to dedicate this victory to Ayrton Senna. I always thought he'd win the championship this year. For me, he was the greatest." Not to be put off by an international controversy, Schumacher's hometown of Köppen celebrated in typical German fashion on their hero's return. A smiling Schumacher waved to 20,000 cheering fans. He was presented with a special medal of the town. For his fans, the Paris-based FIA seemed a long way away.
I know that there have been some investigations in future situations.
The 1995 season was just as successful. Schumacher effectively defended his title with Benetton. He took Benetton to its first Constructors' Championship and became the youngest two-time world champion in Formula One history. Schumacher now had Renault power to match the Williams, and he dominated the season. It was marred, however, by several more collisions between himself and Hill. In an overtaking manoeuvre, Hill took them both out of the British Grand Prix near the start of the race. Having taken 9 GP wins, Michael finished the season to take his second championship. At the track, where he began racing go-karts as a youngster, Schumacher gave a demonstration of high-speed racing in a kart and was just as swift at denying rumours that he was on the verge of signing a deal with Italian team Ferrari for the next season. "For me, it is important that I will have a car and a team that can win the World Championship," he said. "I'm happy at Benetton, and many things will have to be right with a new team if I'm going to change. I have had talks with Ferrari, but there is no result yet." The German said he was talking with several teams.
There is no real point to discuss it at the moment. There are 4 teams available I have the possibility to drive in, and I'm going to sort out between the 4 possibilities where I'm going to drive. Obviously, I'm quite happy in Benetton at the moment. Ferrari would be a very nice situation to drive in, as well McLaren, Mercedes, and Williams' team is very successful as well. So there's 4 good opportunities, and I'm going to see and find out where I'm going to drive next.
Having won the Formula One Championship, Schumacher said this was because he was in the better team and was hopeful of clinching the Constructors' Championship for Benetton.
My target really this year was not just to win the driving championship, I wanted to win the Constructors' Championship, which is not done yet, and I think if this is done, I feel really released.
And to put an end to any further speculation on his future, having struck a reported $30 million deal with Ferrari, Schumacher said he was looking forward to the challenge of driving for the Italian team in '96, saying it would give him fresh motivation.
Having Villeneuve, Damon Hill in the Williams car, Gerhard Jean Alesi in the Benetton car, myself and Eddie in the Ferrari car, with a certain number of question marks over all the teams, I think it's it could be quite interesting.